Hello, I'm Stephen Lader, a co-chair of our annual stewardship campaign. Here in North Carolina, we're a state with a large agricultural sector, so the harvest and harvest festivals are not just historical notes, they're part of our calendar and part of our culture. This is a resonant time of year in which we are particularly attuned to themes of God's provision, abundance, and gratitude. Harvest festivals are community celebrations of God's gift, times for sharing God's gifts. The theme of sharing the harvest is woven throughout the Bible. Think about the parable of the rich fool. Jesus told the story of the farmer who enjoyed a harvest so bountiful that he was unable to store all his grain and decided to build additional storage barns. Jesus condemned the farmer because he thought only of his own material bounty. Had he been willing to share some of his abundance with his less fortunate neighbors, Jesus taught, he would have been rich in the sight of God. Today, we celebrate our bounty, and we ask you to share your abundance. Thank you for joining our brothers and sisters for our virtual gathering.
Hi, this is John. A couple of weeks ago, a number of us were privileged to go to the James Creek orchards, where we met with David and Anne Marie Thornton, who own the orchards and who own the James Creek Cider House. To see their love for God's creation, to see their love for the sunshine, for tree, for rain, to see how they take these gifts of God and transform them into something new, into bottles of cider that then they can share with their friends, was transformative. I've known the two of them for, 5 years now. But to see this part of their lives brought me closer to them and closer to God. I hope that this experience at their orchards will help you come to appreciate them, their ministry of hospitality, but especially to appreciate God and God's love and God's providence for all of us. Thanks again for joining us. I'm sure we'll have a great time together.
Good morning. We're David and Anne Marie Thornton, and we run the James Creek Orchards and the James Creek Cider House. Today we're going to be celebrating the bounty of our harvest with some fresh apples off the trees and an introduction to some of our ciders.
Yeah. Want me to start with a little
Sure.
Mighty Hunter? So we grow about 65, 70 different kinds of apples, and most of them find their way into our cider. We also source apples from the Brushy Mountains and a few from Hendersonville. This Stargazer Mighty Hunter is it's made with Stamen Winesap apples, which is a really great old southern apple. One of our favorites. We named this cider Mighty Hunter, really after my uncle, who was a lover of the night sky and taught his kids and nieces and nephews lots about the night sky. Orion rises about midnight in October, which is his birthday, so we named this cider for him because October is when lots of really great apples start ripening.
That's right.
But this cider is semi-dry. It has a really nice acidity to it, and it's great to pair with foods or drink on its own.
So the cider house philosophy for us, it means using only fruit. We're a harvest-based cidery. We like to use North Carolina fruit or fruit from select orchardists that we know in other parts of the country to make some interesting ciders. But these ciders are only from North Carolina fruit, either our own or neighbors of ours, extending up to the mountains, up to the Brushy Mountains. We don't put any additives into the ciders. There's no added sugar. There are no other adjustments. We hit these flavor marks by blending different fermentations together, so that this is truly just fruit of the tree.
Yeah, this is a stamen right here, isn't it?
That is a Stamen Winesap apple.
That's what it looks like.
So
It's great for eating too.
now we've designed these ciders to pair well with food. Many of our ciders are a little more dry than your average grocery store cider, but that helps them pair nicely with food. If you like things a little sweeter, the ciders we're going to taste in just a moment are a little bit more sweet than the Mighty Hunter. The Mighty Hunter tends to be a little more crisp. So they're a lovely yeasty notes on this. This has a distinctively cidery smell, which is a very pleasant smell. And notes of baked apple. There's certainly some tartness there, and just a wee hint of residual sugar left from the fermentation.
I think it's fun to talk about apples at harvest time because cider making, which we do, is one way of preserving apples, and especially in North Carolina, apples ripen really from June all the way through November. But people with subsistence farms would have eaten apples every day, all year long, in different forms, in dried apples or applesauce, or frying up apples for breakfast, and of course cider as well. So
That's right.
it's a fun way of preserving the harvest. All right, you ready to move on to
All
Big
right,
Dipper?
we'll move on
All
to
right,
Big Dipper.
Here. Right on.
And
Do
I'll
that
let
very
you-
often, but.
I'll let you lead the charge on the Big Dipper.
All right. Well, this is Big Dipper. Big Dipper is just slightly sweeter than Mighty Hunter, obviously named for the old Big Dipper. This cider is often made with Gold Rush apples, which is a modern apple that ripens in October, and sometimes with Pink Ladies, another modern kind of dessert eating apple that ripens in November. And we make this cider to be just a little bit sweeter than Mighty Hunter for people who enjoy that. And it does have a distinct profile.
Yes, it does. This cider is different tasting and certainly different. It has different aromas. This is a little more crisp, a little more floral, just different fermentations blended together. And then a little more residual sugar for people who like a little bit of a sweeter beverage.
Yeah, and it's creamier, not maybe quite as acidic as the Mighty Hunter. So
Yeah, that's correct.
Mighty Hunter often we eat with, I don't know, barbecue,
Hard cheeses.
hard cheeses, things like that. Big Dipper, maybe just to sort of sip in the early evening, and
Or
with
pulled
meals.
pork. Yeah,
Yeah, pulled pork is good.
that's right. That's nice.
Yeah, tacos.
Sure. So it will cut through a pepper. So spicy stuff with a little sweetness next to it can be very tasty.
Yeah, and this has a little tropical fruit note on it, which is kind of fun. A little like maybe papaya. It's really interesting to get all these different aromas and flavors from just apples and see kind of how they express themselves. It's
And
a lot of fun.
it does sound funny to think that something fermented from apples or even from a grape can have all these aromas, but it's a part of the fermentation process. The yeast produce these different fruity and floral esters, and it really can make the beverage more interesting if you're true to the fermentation.
All right,
So,
so
you ready?
yeah, move on to Beehive Ginger. So we
Very good for the orchard, by the way.
we try not to take ourselves too seriously, so we like to produce 100% apple ciders, and then we also have fun blending in other fruits. And for this one, we blend in honey and ginger. So honey, none of the other. This one maybe has a little sugar in it. It's unusual for us to use sugar or
to
sweetener,
add something sweet.
but sometimes people enjoy drinking something a little bit sweeter, and so we reach for honey, and this one has been a lot of fun. So with the ginger, it's got kind of a sweet, spicy thing going on, so it's fairly balanced. And when you sniff it, you get that warm honey aroma right away. So I think this is a very inviting and kind of approachable cider.
Yeah, very much.
And ginger, of course.
To pair this, it's wonderful with fish. It's wonderful with sushi, actually. Just like ginger comes on your plate, and it has enough sweetness to cut through some pepper as well. So this pairs nicely with spicy foods.
Yeah, this
Thai
one
food,
is
Chinese food,
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very good with Thai.
right?
Yeah, it's very popular. We had started it as a seasonal, but we've been working hard to get North Carolina wildflower honey all year and keep it around.
And occasionally we get to use the honey from our own orchards because we do have beekeepers come to bring us bees for pollination. And so there are some local beekeepers that we can buy some honey from.
Yeah.
All right, you want
All right.
to toss that?
Yeah. And the last one is our winter solstice, which we make for the winter time. So this one is kind of more of a sweet dessert cider. It does have a little sugar in it. It also has a little cinnamon and nutmeg in it. It's kind of in the tradition of a warm winter spiced cider. And yeah, sometimes I like it with dessert or instead of dessert. Just kind of sip this by the fire.
Right. It's a lovely winter warmer. This was also aged in American oak barrels, and so you get spicy notes from those barrels. American oak in particular likes to lend notes of coconut and vanilla, and so you'll capture those and the oak itself on the nose, which is a lot of fun, and that'll really come out as it warms up a little in your hand. And then the spices are very, very subtle, but they're there. Bread pudding is what it reminds me a little bit of a bread pudding. There's some raisiny or date-like notes in there, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, or a pecan pie. With pecan pie.
But not that sweet.
No, I like drinking it with pecan pie.
Oh yeah, it does.
But it does have a bit of a nutty character to it.
Yeah, there.
It's sort of fun.
I agree. So, at our orchard here, we grow many different heirloom apples from North Carolina. We've arrayed a few of them on the table right now, and they come in all colors and shapes and sizes. So from a bright gold, that's a Grimes Golden, which is a parent of Golden Delicious, all the way down to a tiny little Hughes Crab, which makes a delicious cider. I want you guys to take a little bite of these. That is a Roxbury russet.
See how knobby it is?
And russeted.
Yeah. If you're familiar with grocery store apples, you don't realize that apples come in so many shades of mustard and brown, and with these tough skins that are great for tannins and cider making. Is this a
That's a
wine
Virginia
sap?
wine sap.
Yeah, this is an old-fashioned wine sap. So these guys are cousins. John was asking about naming conventions, and sometimes they're all about naming it for somebody's favorite. But if an apple is a sport of another one or they're related, often you'll see those names intertwined that way.
And many of the old-timey apples were named for their ability to keep or when they would ripen. So we have Terry Winters down in the orchard, which is a late ripening apple, and they even have a little frosty bloom on. They're small, but they have a little frosty bloom on them all during the fall. They won't ripen until November. Johnson's Keeper was named because you could throw it in the root cellar and it would still be crunchy in February. Arkansas Blacks are a favorite. There's some little Arkansas Black in some of these ciders. Those are crunchy apples that last all through the fall and into the winter. They keep very well.
Even better after they're kept. Really.
Yeah, they are actually a little easier to eat after they've been stored for a little bit. So we have a lovely harvest this year. We've been very lucky and very blessed.
Thank you guys so much. I have loved this morning.
Oh, thank you.
Your property is beautiful. Your apples are delicious, and your cider really distills the essence of this place, as well as your love and creativity. And putting that into a bottle and being able to replicate that time and again, hundreds of bottles at a time, is just amazing to me. I think that's fantastic.
Wow.
So thank you.
Well, thank you. You reminded me of one of the things, we were talking earlier about what fun it is to share apples with people and cider too. It's always fun to understand that the cider goes off to other people's homes and becomes part of their celebrations and fun times, and it's always fun to hear about that from folks and share it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a remarkable. Your apples come from this dirt to birthday parties, to wedding celebrations, to people sitting by the fire with their spouses, to family celebrations across North Carolina. That must be remarkable to be able to share that with folks. So
I think that's what's the most fun.
It is.
That and sharing a love for apples and
Yeah.
talking to people about them.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.